The stepmother stole everything from the daughter, but the father left a note capable of destroying her. On the day the Valdemar fortune was officially transferred to Serena, the flawless stepmother everyone feared, the entire room held its breath. Aligned attorneys, attentive directors, invited journalists. It seemed like a coronation. And there, in the back, almost hidden, stood Liora Valdemar, the legitimate daughter, holding only a small wooden box that Serena had pushed toward her with contempt. "Take it. It's all your father thought you deserved," the stepmother said, without even looking her in the eyes. Some laughed. Others looked away. Liora didn't react. She simply closed her fingers around the box, as if holding something fragile, almost worthless. No one in that room knew that. By doing so, she was accepting much more than a forgotten object. She was accepting a mission. Months later, before the same board that watched her be humiliated, Liora takes the stage, opens the same box, and reads a note that makes Serena turn pale instantly, because on that piece of paper was the phrase that destroyed the entire charade. "If you're reading this, my daughter, it's because your stepmother betrayed me." The entire room fell silent. Serena's downfall began there, in front of everyone. The story the audience will know today has never been told from the side of someone who lost everything, until discovering she had never lost anything at all. For years, Liora Valdemar believed she was just the ignored daughter, left behind after the arrival of the perfect stepmother, Serena, the woman who turned manipulation into art and convinced everyone she was the family's guardian. When patriarch Henrik Valdemar died, Serena executed the plan she had been building in silence. She erased Liora from the inheritance, forged documents, and presented a will that seemed irrefutable. The legitimate daughter left her father's house with a wooden box and a destroyed reputation. But what no one imagined is that Henrik had foreseen everything and left Liora a trail of secrets capable of reversing decades of lies. Today, you won't just follow a dispute over wealth. You'll enter a story about betrayal, power, buried documents, and the intelligence of a father who planned his last move to protect the only person he ever truly loved. What began as humiliation ends as historic revenge. Stay with us, because what you're about to discover will change how you see family loyalty forever. Before Serena Valdemar became the name whispered with fear in corporate hallways and society galas, before she orchestrated one of the most elaborate inheritance frauds in modern history, there was a time when the Valdemar estate knew peace. There was a time when a little girl named Liora ran through marble corridors chasing her father's laughter. Henrik Valdemar wasn't just a patriarch, he was an empire. Steel manufacturing, international shipping, real estate holdings across 3 continents. The Valdemar name meant power, legacy, and unshakable tradition. But to Liora, he was simply Papa, the man who taught her to read financial reports at age 7, who let her sit in board meetings coloring while billion-dollar deals closed around her. "One day, little one," Henrik would say, lifting her onto his desk, "all of this will be yours, but only if you understand it. Power without wisdom is just noise." Liora remembered those words for the rest of her life. Her mother, Elise, had died when Liora was only 4, a car accident on a rainy October evening that left Henrik a widower and Liora motherless. The grief that followed was profound. Henrik wore black for 2 years. The estate fell into a respectful silence. Employees spoke in hushed tones. Even the gardens seemed to mourn. For 6 years, it was just the 2 of them, father and daughter. Empire and heir. Henrik never remarried. He never even dated. "Your mother was irreplaceable," he told Liora once when she asked if he was lonely. "Some loves don't come twice, but loneliness is a predator that hunts even the strongest men." And Serena Castelline knew exactly how to exploit it. Serena entered their lives like spring after winter, gradual, beautiful, seemingly inevitable. She was introduced to Henrik at a charity gala in Vienna. A curator at an art museum, Serena possessed the kind of refined elegance that made people trust her instantly. She spoke 4 languages fluently. She understood classical music. She could discuss Renaissance painters and modern architecture with equal sophistication. At 42, she was 15 years younger than Henrik, but mature enough to seem like a genuine companion rather than a trophy. "She's cultured," Henrik's friends said. "She's appropriate," his advisors agreed. "She understands your world," his lawyers nodded. What none of them saw, what Henrik himself didn't see until it was too late, was that Serena didn't want to understand his world. She wanted to own it. The courtship lasted 8 months. Serena was patient, methodical. She never pushed. She never demanded. She simply appeared at the right events, saying the right things, wearing the right clothes, always knowing exactly when to be charming and when to be vulnerable. Liora was 10 years old when they married. She remembered the wedding, a small, elegant ceremony in the estate's private chapel, white roses everywhere, classical violin. Serena, in a cream-colored dress that somehow made her look both innocent and regal. "You'll have a mother again," Henrik told Liora the night before, his voice thick with hope. "Someone to care for you when I'm traveling. Someone to help guide you." Liora wanted to believe him. She really did. But even at 10, she noticed things. The way Serena's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at Liora. The way her voice changed when Henrik left the room. The way she touched everything in the house as if taking inventory. The changes started slowly. "Your father needs rest," Serena would say, intercepting Liora outside Henrik's study. "He's had such a long day. Perhaps you could visit him tomorrow instead. Your room would look so much better in the east wing," Serena suggested sweetly. "More sunlight, more privacy, your own little world." Translation: farther from Henrik's bedroom, farther from his office, farther from influence. Within a year, Liora's nightly routine of reading financial reports with her father became a weekly occurrence, then monthly, then almost never. "He's so busy, darling," Serena would coo. "Running an empire is exhausting. We must protect his energy." The family dinners that once were filled with Liora's questions about business strategy became formal affairs where children were expected to be seen, not heard. "Let the adults talk, Liora," Serena would say with a patient smile. "There will be time for you to learn these things later." But later never came. The subtle psychological warfare was masterful. Serena never screamed, never hit, never did anything that could be called abuse. She simply repositioned reality. Henrik's friends started seeing less of Liora and more of Serena at social events. Business associates began addressing Serena as if she were Henrik's partner, not his wife. Even the household staff started reporting to Serena first, Henrik second. And Liora, she became the daughter who was struggling to adjust. "She's having trouble at school," Serena would sigh to concerned relatives. "She's been acting out," Serena would whisper to Henrik's associates. "She resents me, of course," Serena would confide to friends. "It's natural. Losing her mother so young, I try to be patient." None of it was true, but it didn't matter. Perception became reality. The first major betrayal came when Liora was 13. She overheard a conversation she was never meant to hear. Serena on the phone in the library, voice low and cold, nothing like the warm tone she used with Henrik. "The will needs to be updated," Serena said. "Her child that age doesn't understand wealth management." Henrik agrees that a trust might be more appropriate. Controlled access, professional oversight. Translation: take away Liora's direct inheritance. Put it in Serena's control. Liora's blood ran cold. She tried to tell her father, tried to explain what she'd heard, but the moment she approached Henrik's study, Serena was there, intercepting with a concerned expression. "Darling, your father and I were just discussing your future," Serena said smoothly. "We think it's wise to protect your inheritance until you're truly ready to manage it. It's what your mother would have wanted." Henrik nodded, looking tired. "It's for your own good, little one." And just like that, Liora realized she was losing the war, not through violence, through isolation, through whispers, through the slow, methodical erosion of her place in her own family. Henrik Valdemar was 63 when the first symptoms appeared. Memory lapses, fatigue, moments of confusion during board meetings. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make people exchange worried glances. "It's stress," Henrik insisted. Running 3 companies across 2 continents would tire anyone. But Serena saw opportunity. Within weeks, she had convinced Henrik to see a specialist, specifically Dr. Marcus Thorne, a neurologist whose credentials were impeccable and whose loyalty, as it turned out, could be bought. The diagnosis came swiftly. Early-stage cognitive decline, possibly dementia. "We caught it early," Dr. Thorne assured them in his pristine office. "With proper management, medication, and reduced stress, we can slow the progression significantly." Reduced stress became Serena's weapon. "The board meetings are too much for you now, darling," she'd say gently, stroking Henrik's hand. "Let me attend in your place, just temporarily, just until you're stronger. The international travel is exhausting," she'd whisper. "I'll represent the company. You focus on healing." All these visitors, They tire you so, she'd sigh. Let me screen who comes to see you. Only those who truly matter. Henrik, frightened by his own failing mind, agreed to everything. And Liora, now 19 and away at university, watched helplessly as her father disappeared behind walls of protection. The isolation was surgical. Phone calls to the estate were intercepted by Serena's personal assistant. Your father is resting. Your father is in treatment. Your father will call you back when he's feeling better. He never called back. When Liora came home for holidays, she found her father different, slower, more confused, always medicated, always surrounded by Serena's carefully selected staff. Papa, can we talk alone? Liora asked during Christmas break. Your father needs his rest after meals, Serena interjected smoothly. Doctor's orders, perhaps later. Later never came. The few moments Liora managed to steal with her father were strange. Sometimes Henrik seemed like himself, sharp, aware, asking about her studies. Other times he stared at her as if trying to remember who she was. The medication makes him foggy, Serena explained with practiced concern. It's temporary, he'll adjust. But he never adjusted. Instead, Henrik Valdemar, the man who once controlled a multi-billion-dollar empire with precision and ruthlessness, became a ghost in his own home. While Henrik faded, Serena flourished. She began attending board meetings on Henrik's behalf. She started signing documents with Henrik's authorization. She became the face of Valdemar Industries at every major event. Mrs. Valdemar is handling things beautifully during this difficult time, the board members would say. Such dedication, shareholders agreed. A true partner, the financial press wrote. What none of them knew, what none of them wanted to know, was that Serena was systematically rewriting the company's power structure. Board members who questioned her were suddenly retired with generous packages. Executives loyal to Henrik found themselves transferred to remote offices. Accountants who asked uncomfortable questions were replaced by more qualified professionals. All of it legal, all of it documented, all of it signed by Henrik Valdemar himself. Except Henrik wasn't signing anything. Liora discovered the truth during a rare, unsupervised visit to her father's study. She found stacks of documents, all with her father's signature, except the handwriting varied slightly. Close enough to pass legal scrutiny, different enough to notice if you knew Henrik's true signature. Her blood ran cold. She photographed everything with her phone, hands shaking. Then she heard footsteps. Liora, Serena's voice was ice wrapped in silk. What are you doing in here? Looking for my father's reading glasses, Liora lied. He asked me to find them. Serena's smile didn't waver, but her eyes knew. How thoughtful. But your father is sleeping. Why don't you come back tomorrow? It wasn't a suggestion. That night, Liora tried to call the family attorney. His office informed her he'd retired. The new attorney was someone she'd never heard of. She tried calling board members she'd known since childhood. None returned her calls. She tried reaching her father's oldest friend, Marcus Beaumont. His assistant said he was traveling indefinitely. Every door was closed. Every ally was gone. Every path blocked. Serena had been thorough. Henrik made one desperate attempt to reach his daughter. It happened during Liora's 21st birthday visit. Henrik seemed more lucid than usual. Serena had left for a charity event in the city, and the regular nurse was on break. Henrik grabbed Liora's hand with surprising strength. Listen to me, he whispered urgently. Something is wrong. I can't remember signing things, but they tell me I did. Documents. Changes. I don't. His eyes filled with tears. I tried to protect you, he continued, voice breaking. I left something safe, a man named... His expression clouded. The medication was pulling him back under. Papa, what man? Where? Arcturus, Henrik managed. The answer is in the box, the one your mother... Then Serena's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Henrik, you shouldn't be out of bed. She swept in, all concern and efficiency, injecting something into Henrik's IV that made him drowsy within seconds. The excitement is too much for him, Serena said, not looking at Liora. You should go. I'm his daughter, and I'm his wife, and his medical proxy, and the person responsible for his care. Serena finally met Liora's eyes. You should go. It was the last real conversation Liora ever had with her father. 3 months later, Henrik Valdemar died in his sleep. The official cause, complications from dementia. The unofficial truth, a man was erased long before his heart stopped beating. The funeral was scheduled for the following week. Serena handled all arrangements. Small and private, she announced. Henrik wouldn't have wanted a spectacle, but Henrik Valdemar had built an empire. Hundreds wanted to attend. Serena allowed only 50, and she controlled the guest list. The funeral of Henrik Valdemar should have been a testament to a life well lived. Instead, it became a performance. Serena wore black Chanel with a single strand of pearls. Grief made elegant. She dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. She accepted condolences with the perfect mixture of strength and vulnerability. "He was everything to me," she told the carefully selected mourners. "He's at peace now," she assured the board members. "He left everything in order," she confided to the attorneys. Liora stood apart from the main gathering, isolated near the back of the chapel. She wore her mother's black dress, the one Henrik had saved for her. It didn't fit perfectly, but it was all she had. No one approached her. Several people she'd known since childhood walked past without acknowledgement. Henrik's business partners offered Serena sympathetic nods while avoiding Liora's gaze entirely. It was as if she had already been erased. The reading of the will was scheduled for 3 days after the funeral. "Standard procedure," the new attorney, Gerald Finch, explained. Finch was thin, sharp-featured, with eyes that never quite met anyone's directly. He'd been Henrik's attorney for exactly 6 months, replacing Martin Drummond, who had handled the Valdemar legal affairs for 30 years. "Where's Martin?" Liora asked. "Retired," Finch said simply. "Mr. Valdemar wanted fresh perspective." Liora didn't believe that for a second. The reading took place in the main conference room of Valdemar Industries headquarters, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The long mahogany table could seat 40 people. Today it held 23. Board members, senior executives, Serena's personal attorney, financial advisors, and journalists from 3 major publications, invited by Serena herself. "Transparency," she'd said. Henrik would have wanted transparency. Liora sat alone at the far end of the table. Gerald Finch cleared his throat and began reading. "The last will and testament of Henrik Valdemar, dated March 15th of this year." Liora's stomach dropped. March 15th was just 3 months before her father's death, during the period when Henrik could barely remember his own name. "I, Henrik Valdemar, being of sound mind and body." Sound mind. The phrase was a lie so blatant it took Liora's breath away. "Do hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate, including all business holdings, properties, financial assets, and personal effects, to my beloved wife, Serena Castellan Valdemar." The room remained silent, professional, expected, with the exception of a personal item to be given to my daughter, Liora Valdemar, as a token of remembrance. That was it. 21 years as Henrik's daughter. A lifetime of "this will all be yours one day." Billions of dollars in assets, reduced to a token of remembrance. Finch continued with legal specifications, trusts, board appointments, charitable donations. Every word cemented Serena's absolute control. When he finished, Serena dabbed at her eyes again. "Henrik wanted to ensure the company's future," she said softly. "He knew that required experience, maturity, a steady hand." Her eyes flickered to Liora for just a moment. Translation: "You were never enough." Then Serena pushed a small wooden box across the table, carved mahogany with brass hinges, about the size of a jewelry box. "Your inheritance," Serena said. Not kindly, not cruelly, just factually. Several people at the table looked uncomfortable. Henrik's cousin, Richard, coughed into his fist. One of the journalists whispered something to her colleague. But no one objected. No one defended Liora. No one questioned the obvious injustice. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Miss Valdemar?" Finch asked, his tone suggesting she should say nothing at all. Liora looked at the box, then at Serena, then at the board members who had watched her grow up, who had bounced her on their knees at company picnics, who had promised her father they'd look after his little girl. Not one of them met her eyes. "No," Liora said quietly. "Nothing to say." She stood, picked up the box, and walked toward the door. Behind her she heard Serena's voice, warm and magnanimous. "I want everyone to know that Liora will always be welcome in this family. Despite her difficulties, over the years, I bear her no ill will. In fact, I've arranged for a monthly allowance." Liora stopped walking. Monthly allowance, like she was a child, like she was a charity case. $5,000 should be more than sufficient for a young woman starting out. Henrik would have wanted her provided for, within reason. One of Henrik's former friends, Lawrence, actually chuckled. "Generous of you, Serena, especially given the complications." What complications? Liora turned around. The room fell silent. Lawrence looked caught. Well, your father expressed concerns about your judgment, your stability. It's in the psychiatric evaluations from... What psychiatric evaluations? The ones from Dr. Kellerman, Serena said smoothly. Your father was worried about your mental health during your university years. The evaluations recommended against giving you significant financial responsibility. Liora felt the floor tilt. She'd never seen Dr. Kellerman. She'd never had psychiatric evaluations. That's a lie, Liora said. The documents are all filed with the estate, Finch interjected. Signed by both you and Dr. Kellerman. I never signed anything. The signature analysis says otherwise, Finch replied, closing his folder. Miss Valdemar, I understand this is emotional, but the will is ironclad. I suggest you accept your father's wishes with grace. The journalists were taking notes now. Tomorrow's headline was already written. Troubled heiress contests father's final wishes, Serena had won. As Liora finally left the room, she felt a hand briefly touch hers. It was gone in a second. She turned to see Jonathan Pierce, her father's oldest executive, walking away. He didn't look back. But in that brief touch, he'd pressed something into her palm. A business card. On the back, in handwriting she didn't recognize, trust the box. Liora didn't go back to the estate. She couldn't face another night in that house, in the room Serena had thoughtfully moved her 2 years ago, surrounded by staff who now took orders from her stepmother. Instead, she checked into a modest hotel downtown, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the front desk accepted cash. The box sat on the bed like a challenge. For 2 hours, Liora just stared at it. This was her inheritance, her father's final message. Everything he thought she deserved after a lifetime of promises. A wooden box. She almost laughed, almost cried, did both. Then she opened it. Inside, carefully wrapped in soft velvet, were items that made no immediate sense. A small brass key with no label, 3 USB drives, each marked with a single letter, A-M-R-A, folded piece of paper with what looked like random numbers, a photograph of Liora as a child sitting on her father's desk, a second photograph, her mother, Elise, holding baby Liora, and beneath everything, carved into the bottom of the box itself, Arcturus, Arcturus, the word her father had tried to say before Serena interrupted. Liora's hands trembled as she examined each item. The key was old, European style, possibly for a safety deposit box. The USB drives were standard, unmarked except for those letters. The paper, with numbers. She studied it closer. They weren't random. They followed a pattern, a code, and carved into the wood. Arcturus. She started with the USB drives. Drive A, loaded instantly on her laptop, and Liora's breath caught. Financial records, hundreds of pages, transfers from Valdemar Industries to offshore accounts, dates spanning the last 5 years, amounts that made her dizzy. $2.3 million to a Cayman Islands holding company. Signatory, Henrik Valdemar. $5.7 million to a Swiss investment fund. Signatory, Henrik Valdemar. $12 million to a Luxembourg trust. Signatory, Henrik Valdemar. Except, Liora opened her father's old financial reports, the ones she used to study with him as a child. She knew his methods, his investment philosophy, his patterns. These transactions violated every principle he'd ever taught her. Henrik Valdemar didn't invest in anonymous holding companies. He didn't trust offshore accounts. He certainly didn't move money without board approval, which meant someone else had made these transactions, someone with access to his signature, someone who needed money hidden before the inheritance was finalized. Serena. Drive M was different, medical records, but not Henrik's. These were Liora's supposed psychiatric evaluations, the ones mentioned during the will reading. She read through them with growing horror. Patient exhibits signs of delusional thinking. Patient shows hostility towards stepmother figure. Patient demonstrates financial irresponsibility. Patient requires psychiatric intervention before inheritance consideration. Each page was signed by Dr. Kellerman. Each page included Liora's supposed signature. She'd never met Dr. Kellerman. She'd never been evaluated. That wasn't even her signature. But the documents looked official, professional, legally sound. They'd been created specifically to justify cutting her out of the will. Drive R made her cry. Audio files. Dozens of them. She clicked the first one, dated 5 years ago, right after Serena married Henrik. Her father's voice filled the room. Recording 1. If you're hearing this, Liora, something has gone wrong. I hope I'm just being paranoid. I hope we laugh about this someday, but I need insurance. Liora covered her mouth. Serena suggested we update the will today. She said it's standard after marriage, but something felt off. The attorney she recommended isn't Martin. I don't know this man. He kept steering conversation toward putting assets in trusts. For tax purposes, he said. But I've done taxes for 40 years. This doesn't feel right. Another file, dated 1 year later. She's controlling who I see now. Subtle but clear. Old friends suddenly aren't good for my stress levels. You suddenly need space to grow. Everyone I trust is being pushed away. I tried to talk to Marcus Beaumont about it. His phone was disconnected the next day. Another, dated 2 years ago, voice weaker. The medication makes it hard to think. I can't remember signing things. They show me documents with my signature, but I don't remember. Serena says it's the illness. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm paranoid. But just in case, and I've been documenting everything. The real will is safe. The evidence is safe. You're safe. The last file, dated 3 weeks before his death, barely a whisper. My brilliant daughter. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And Serena has shown her true nature. Don't fight her openly. You'll lose. She's too prepared. Instead, follow the code. Follow Arcturus. I've left you everything you need to prove the truth. Trust no one. Not the attorneys. Not the board. Trust the evidence. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive. Let me protect you now. Finish what I started. I love you, little one. Always. The recording ended. Liora sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. Her father had known. He'd known everything. And he'd fought back the only way he could, in secret, in shadows, leaving breadcrumbs for the one person he knew would never give up. She pulled out the paper with numbers again. Code. Her father said, follow the code. She stared at the numbers, looking for patterns. Her father had taught her cryptography basics as a game when she was young. Business is warfare, he'd said. Learn to hide your secrets. Then she saw it. The numbers corresponded to letters, a simple substitution cipher. The kind they'd played with together. She decoded quickly. If something happens to me, seek Bank Arcturus account 7749. Key opens truth. Bank Arcturus. She searched online. Found it immediately. A private Swiss bank specializing in estate protection and secure document storage. The brass key wasn't for a local safety deposit box. It was for a Swiss vault. And inside that vault was something Serena desperately needed to stay hidden. Liora booked a flight to Zurich for the following morning. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't pack much. She simply disappeared, just like her father had taught her. In business, Henrik once said, the greatest weapon is information your enemy doesn't know you have. Serena thought she'd won. Serena thought Liora was defeated, humiliated, powerless. Serena was wrong. The flight to Zurich took 11 hours. Liora didn't sleep. She spent the time reviewing every file on the USB drives, committing names, dates, and amounts to memory. If Serena had somehow tracked her, if the drives were discovered, Liora needed the information burned into her mind. The evidence was staggering. Over 5 years, approximately $87 million had been moved from Valdemar Industries into accounts Serena controlled. The transactions were masked as legitimate business expenses, investment diversification, international expansion costs. But Liora knew her father's business model. These expenditures made no sense. A $4 million consulting fee to a firm that didn't exist. A $7 million equipment purchase from a supplier with no manufacturing capability. A $12 million research grant to a foundation that had been dissolved years earlier. Every transaction bore Henrik's signature. Every transaction had been approved by the new attorney, Gerald Finch. Every transaction was technically legal, unless you could prove Henrik hadn't authorized them, which was exactly what Liora intended to do. Bank Arcturus didn't advertise. No street signs, no website listings, just a discreet brass plaque beside an unmarked door in Zurich's financial district. Liora entered and was immediately greeted by a receptionist who could have been carved from ice, blonde, impeccable, utterly professional. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have this. Liora placed the brass key on the desk. The receptionist's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. One moment. She disappeared through a rear door. 5 minutes later, Liora was escorted into a private office where a man in his 60s waited. Silver hair, kind eyes, expensive suit. Miss Valdemar, he said, standing. My name is Andreas Keller. I've been expecting you. You knew I'd come. Your father was very specific. He said if anything happened to him, you would eventually find your way here. Keller gestured to a chair. Please sit, we have much to discuss. Keller explained that Henrik had opened the account 7 years ago, 1 year after marrying Serena. Your father was a brilliant man, Keller said. He came to me with concerns about his new wife. Nothing concrete, just instincts. He said he wanted insurance. What kind of insurance? The kind that protects truth. Keller produced a leather portfolio. Mr. Valdemar deposited several items here for safekeeping. Documents, recordings, evidence. He updated the deposits regularly, particularly in his final year. He slid the portfolio across the desk. He left instructions. If he died and you came seeking this account, I was to give you everything. No questions asked, no legal interference. This is a private bank, Miss Valdemar. We protect our clients' wishes absolutely. Liora opened the portfolio. Inside were documents that made the USB drives look like footnotes. Original board meeting minutes, showing Serena attending meetings Henrik supposedly conducted while he was sedated at home. Signature analysis reports comparing Henrik's real signature to the ones on recent documents. The variance was undeniable. Pharmacological records showing Henrik had been given medication far exceeding therapeutic doses, dosages that would have rendered him incapable of making financial decisions. Emails between Serena and Dr. Marcus Thorne discussing management of the patient and maintaining appropriate cognitive impairment. Contracts between Serena and Gerald Finch, dated before Henrik's diagnosis, proving they'd planned this together. And most damning, transfer records showing where the stolen $87 million had actually gone, not to business ventures, not to investments, to Serena's personal accounts. There's more, Keller said quietly. He produced a sealed envelope. Your father recorded a final video message. He asked that you watch it here, privately. He set up a laptop and excused himself from the room. Liora clicked play. Her father appeared on screen, not the sick, confused man from his final years, but Henrik Valdemar, as she remembered him, clear-eyed, strong, determined. Hello, little one. Liora's vision blurred with tears. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm so deeply sorry for what you've endured. I should have been stronger. I should have seen Serena's true nature sooner. I should have protected you better. Henrik leaned forward, his expression intense. But I did what I could. Everything in this vault is yours. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. Together they prove that Serena manipulated, defrauded, and betrayed not just me, but the entire Valdemar legacy. The real will is here too, sealed and authenticated by Swiss authorities. In it you inherit everything, as was always intended. Serena gets nothing, but winning won't be easy. She's prepared. She has attorneys, board members, even judges in her pocket. If you challenge her directly, she'll destroy you with legal warfare. She'll drag your name through courts for years, so you must be smarter than her, more patient than her, more ruthless than her. Henrik smiled. The same fierce smile Liora remembered from her childhood. Use the evidence strategically. Let her think she's safe. Let her celebrate her victory. And when she's most confident, most exposed, strike. Not in a courtroom where she can delay and deflect, but in public, in front of the board, in front of the media, in front of everyone she's tried to impress. Destroy her credibility completely. Make it impossible for anyone to support her. Then, and only then, produce the real will. My brilliant daughter, you were always meant to lead this company. Not because of blood or birthright, but because you understand what I built. You respect it. You'll protect it. Finish what I started. Take back what's yours. And build something even greater. I love you. Always. The screen went dark. Liora sat in silence for a long time. Then she wiped her tears, straightened her spine, and stood. Keller returned. I need copies of everything, Liora said. Multiple copies, distributed to different locations. Already done, your father insisted. I need contact information for Martin Drummond, the original family attorney. I have it. And I need the contact for Jonathan Pierce. Keller smiled slightly. Your father anticipated that as well. He handed her a secure phone, untraceable, encrypted. 2 numbers were already programmed in. Mr. Pierce has been waiting for your call, Keller said. He's been gathering additional evidence from inside the company, board members who are uncomfortable with Serena's control, but too afraid to speak up. Employees who've witnessed fraud but had nowhere to report it. He's built a network of people ready to testify when the time is right. Liora felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about justice. This was about legacy. This was war. She called Jonathan Pierce from the bank. Liora. His relief was palpable. Thank God. I wasn't sure you'd find the box in time. I found it. And I found Zurich. What's happening at the company? Pierce's voice dropped. Serena's moving fast. She's calling an emergency board meeting next month. Says she wants to restructure the company. Translation. She's purging anyone who might question her authority. People are scared. Talking about taking buyouts and walking away. Can you delay the meeting? Maybe. Why? Because I need time to prepare. How many board members would actually stand against her if they had proof? Pierce was quiet for a moment. With incontrovertible evidence, 8 out of 13 would flip, maybe 9. But they need to see proof, Liora, not accusations. Proof. They'll see it, all of it, but not yet. Let Serena have her meeting. Let her feel secure. Then we announce a special shareholders session 2 weeks later. What's the play? Liora smiled, her father's smile. We give Serena enough rope to hang herself. And then we spring the trap in front of everyone who matters. Liora stayed in Zurich for 3 more days. She met with Andreas Keller daily, reviewing every document, understanding every piece of evidence, preparing for what was coming. On the 3rd day, Keller presented her with the document that would change everything. Henrik Valdemar's true last will and testament. It had been drafted 4 months before his death, during one of his rare lucid periods. Henrik had traveled to Switzerland alone, or so everyone believed. In reality, he'd brought his old attorney, Martin Drummond, who had retired but remained fiercely loyal. The will was witnessed by Swiss banking officials and authenticated with biometric verification, fingerprints, retinal scans, voice patterns. It was legally unassailable. Liora read through it with trembling hands. I, Henrik Valdemar, being of sound mind and clear judgment, do hereby revoke all previous wills and testaments. To my wife, Serena Castellane Valdemar, I leave the sum of $5 million and the property in Vienna, where we first met. This represents the approximate value of assets she brought into our marriage. She is entitled to nothing more. To my daughter, Liora Valdemar, I leave the entirety of my estate, Valdemar Industries and all subsidiary companies, all properties, all financial assets, all intellectual property and all personal effects. I make this bequest not out of obligation, but out of certainty. Liora has demonstrated the intelligence, integrity, and vision required to lead what I've built. She understands that wealth is stewardship, not ownership. She will protect what I've created and transform it into something greater. Should anyone contest this will, I direct my executors to release all evidence of fraud, manipulation, and financial malfeasance committed against me and my company. The evidence is substantial and incontrovertible. To those who enabled or ignored the betrayal of my trust, you will face consequences not just legal but professional. Your reputations will not survive the revelation of your complicity. This is my final word. Challenge it at your peril. Signed, dated, authenticated, unbreakable. Why didn't he file this publicly? Liora asked. Why leave it here? Keller smiled. Because your father understood strategy. If he'd filed this with local courts, Serena's attorneys would have challenged it immediately. They'd have filed psychiatric evaluations, competency hearings, years of legal delays. But here, in Switzerland, under banking secrecy laws, this document couldn't be touched until you retrieved it. But it's legal in the US. Completely. Swiss authenticated wills are recognized under international law. The moment you present this to a court, the fraudulent will become void. Everything reverts to you. Liora looked at the document for a long time. My father planned all this. Every step. He spent the last months of his life protecting you. Even while Serena controlled his environment, even while medication clouded his mind, he found windows of clarity. He'd slip away to make phone calls. He'd hide recordings. He'd pass notes to employees he trusted. It was remarkable. Keller opened another file. He also left you this. Another video, shorter than the first. Henrik sitting in what looked like a hotel room, not the estate. Probably filmed during one of his supposed business trips. Her additional message for my daughter, Henrik began. By now you've seen the evidence, you know what Serena has done, and you're probably angry. Righteous fury is natural, but don't let it make you reckless. Serena isn't just greedy, she's pathological. She genuinely believes she deserves what she's taken. In her mind, you're the interloper, the inconvenient remnant of my first marriage. She's rewritten history in her head until she's the victim, which makes her dangerous. People like Serena don't surrender. They don't admit fault. When cornered, they lash out. So when you expose her, and you will, be prepared for her to attack you in every way possible, legally, publicly, personally. She'll accuse you of forgery, of elder abuse, of manipulating me. She'll produce witnesses she's paid off. She'll fabricate new evidence, which is why you must be absolutely thorough. Every piece of evidence must be authenticated. Every witness must be unimpeachable. Every legal argument must be airtight. Leave her no room to maneuver, no possibility of escape. Henrik leaned closer to the camera. And remember this, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for everyone Serena has manipulated, threatened, or silenced. Employees too afraid to speak up. Board members who knew something was wrong but looked away. Even the charities she pretended to support while embezzling funds. When you win, and you will win, you'll restore more than just an inheritance. You'll restore integrity to everything I built. I'm proud of you, little one. I always have been. The video ended. Liora made her decision. I need Martin Drummond, she said to Keller. Can you reach him? He's expecting your call. Within an hour, she was on a secure video conference with the attorney who had served her father for 3 decades. Martin Drummond looked older than she remembered, white-haired, tired, but his eyes were sharp. Liora, I'm so sorry I couldn't help you sooner. Serena made it very clear that anyone who supported you would face consequences. She had leverage over several people, including some board members. I had to disappear to stay safe. I understand. But I need you now. Can you come back? I never left. Not really. I've been gathering evidence from outside the company. Witnesses willing to testify. Documentation of Serena's other frauds, and there are several. She's not just embezzled from Valdemar Industries. She's used the company's resources to commit securities fraud, tax evasion, even bribery. Liora felt a grim satisfaction. How soon can you be ready to file? The moment you give the word. But I'd recommend waiting until after Serena's board restructuring meeting. Let her make more mistakes. Let her commit to positions she can't defend. The more confident she becomes, the harder she'll fall. That's the plan, Liora agreed. She's calling an emergency meeting next month. We'll let her have it. Then we call a special shareholders session immediately after and expose everything. Bold, Drummond said. Your father would approve. They spent the next hour strategizing. Legal filings, media coordination, board member outreach, witness preparation. By the end, they had a plan. A devastating, comprehensive, irreversible plan. Before leaving Zurich, Liora visited her father's safety deposit vault one more time. She stood alone in the secure room, surrounded by the evidence of her father's love and protection. I won't let you down, she whispered. I promise. Then she packed everything carefully, secured it in multiple locations, and boarded her flight home. The war was about to begin. Liora returned to the United States as a ghost. She didn't go back to the estate. She didn't contact old friends. She rented a small apartment under an assumed name and began orchestrating her counterattack with military precision. Jonathan Pierce became her inside contact. He fed her real-time updates about Serena's movements, board conversations, and company decisions. She's getting bolder, Pierce reported during their first encrypted call after Zurich. Yesterday, she fired the head of accounting for asking inappropriate questions about expense reports. Today, she announced she's bringing in her own CFO, someone with no connection to your father's organization. Good, Liora said. The more she consolidates power, the more obvious the coup becomes. Let her alienate the old guard. We'll need their testimony. Several executives have reached out to me privately. They're uncomfortable. They want to do something but don't know how. Tell them to document everything, every unusual expense, every strange directive, every instance where Serena overrules established protocol, and tell them to keep copies somewhere safe, not on company servers. Already done. Meanwhile, Martin Drummond was rebuilding the legal team. He recruited attorneys specializing in estate fraud, corporate malfeasance, and international financial crimes. Each was vetted thoroughly. No connections to Serena, no vulnerabilities she could exploit. We're building 3 simultaneous cases, Drummond explained during a strategy session. First, the estate fraud, proving Henrik's true will and invalidating Serena's fabricated one. Second, the corporate embezzlement, criminal charges for the money she stole. Third, the conspiracy, charges against everyone who helped her. Dr. Thorne, Gerald Finch, and several board members. How strong is each case? With your father's evidence? Airtight. But we need to be strategic about timing. If we file the estate case first, Serena's attorneys will tie it up in probate court for years. If we file the criminal case first, she'll flee the country. We need to hit her with everything simultaneously. Overwhelm her legal capacity to respond. Liora nodded. What about public perception? That's where it gets interesting. Drummond smiled. Serena has spent years cultivating a specific image, the devoted wife, the competent executive, the charitable benefactor. That image is her armor. If we crack it publicly before filing charges, her legal defense becomes much harder. Media exposure. Exactly, but not through press releases. Too easy to spin. We need something undeniable, visual, emotional, something that makes her look indefensible. Liora remembered her father's words. Strike in public, in front of everyone who matters. The shareholders' meeting, she said. After Serena's board restructuring, we present the evidence there in front of investors, media, and every board member. Live documentation, video recordings, authenticated signatures. Then we file charges while she's still reeling. Drummond's smile widened. Your father taught you well. The hardest part was waiting. Serena's emergency board meeting was scheduled for October 15th. The shareholders' meeting would follow on November 2nd. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of watching Serena consolidate power. 6 weeks of pretending to be defeated. 6 weeks of letting the woman who destroyed her father think she'd won. But Liora used the time productively. She met with every executive Jonathan Pierce had identified as secretly uncomfortable with Serena's control. She showed them carefully selected pieces of evidence, enough to convince them to cooperate, not enough to risk exposure. I know you're scared, Liora told each one. I know she's threatened you. But my father built this company on integrity. What Serena has done isn't just illegal. It's a betrayal of everything he stood for. And when the truth comes out, the question won't be whether you supported her. It'll be whether you stood up when it mattered. One by one, they agreed to testify. The company's original CFO, forced into early retirement, had kept copies of every suspicious transaction. The head of HR, pressured to fire loyal employees, had documented every termination Serena ordered. Even Henrik's personal physician, who had questioned the medication Dr. Thorne prescribed, came forward with medical records. The web of testimony was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Serena was digging her own grave. Pierce reported that during a private dinner with board members, Serena had openly mocked Henrik's sentimentality about legacy and ethics. The old generation was too cautious, she'd said. They let regulations and tradition limit profitability. I'm modernizing, making bold moves. That's what leadership looks like. Translation. I'm breaking rules because I'm smarter than everyone else. It would play beautifully in court. Even better, Serena had started liquidating company assets, selling off divisions, transferring funds, restructuring subsidiaries, all technically legal moves that a CEO could make. Except she wasn't CEO. She was the widow of the CEO, claiming inheritance rights. Every transaction was evidence of improper asset management. Every sale created a paper trail. Every decision gave prosecutors more ammunition. 10 days before the shareholders' meeting, something happened that almost derailed everything. Pierce called, voice tight with alarm. Someone's investigating you. Serena hired a private investigator. He's been asking questions about your time in Zurich, looking into your bank accounts, trying to find evidence you've been plotting against her. Liora's blood ran cold. If Serena discovered the Swiss evidence before the meeting, has he found anything? Not yet, but he's good. And he's got resources. What do you want me to do? Liora made a split-second decision. Feed him information. Let him discover that I've been staying with a friend in California, distraught and depressed. Let him find evidence of therapy bills, unemployment applications, maybe even some online searches for depression help. Make me look defeated. You want him to report that you're not a threat. Exactly. Let Serena think I'm still broken. It'll make her careless. Pierce was quiet for a moment. You sound like your father. Good. The final piece fell into place 5 days before the meeting. The journalist, Rebecca Thorne, no relation to the corrupt doctor, was an investigative reporter who had built a career exposing corporate fraud. She'd won a Pulitzer for uncovering the Marks & Industries embezzlement scandal 3 years prior. Drummond had been courting her for weeks, promising a story that would define her career. Finally, she agreed to meet with Liora. They met in a secure location, A private room in a law office, no cameras, no recordings. Rebecca was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, skeptical by nature. "I don't do hit pieces," she said immediately. "If this is just a family dispute over money, I'm not interested." "It's not," Liora said. She spent the next 3 hours walking Rebecca through every piece of evidence: the fraudulent will, the falsified psychiatric reports, the embezzled funds, the manipulated medication, the systematic destruction of Henrik Valdemar's final years. Rebecca's expression shifted from skepticism to fascination to anger. This is extraordinary," she finally said. "But why come to me? Why not just file charges and let prosecutors handle it? Because criminal trials take years, appeals take longer. Serena has money and connections. She could fight this for a decade. But if the evidence goes public first, if investors, clients, and business partners see what she's done, her power evaporates. Companies distance themselves. Board members resign. By the time the trial starts, she's already finished." Rebecca nodded slowly. "You want me to break the story at the shareholders' meeting. I want you there when I present the evidence. I want cameras rolling when Serena's lies collapse. I want the world to see her for exactly what she is. And you're willing to give me exclusive access to everything? Documents, recordings, interviews? Everything." Rebecca extended her hand. "Then we have a deal." The night before the shareholders' meeting, Liora couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, surrounded by files and evidence, thinking about her father, thinking about the years they'd lost, thinking about the life Serena had stolen from him, thinking about the justice that was finally coming. She picked up her phone and played Henrik's final video message one more time. "I'm proud of you, little one. I always have been. Tomorrow," Liora whispered to the screen, "tomorrow, everyone else will be proud too." The November sky was grey the morning of the shareholders' meeting. Appropriate, Liora thought. Dark weather for dark revelations. She dressed carefully, a black suit, her mother's pearl necklace, her father's watch, armor made of memory and purpose. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Valdemar Industries headquarters, in the same conference room where she'd been humiliated months ago. Serena had chosen the location deliberately, no doubt wanting to reinforce her dominance on the company's home territory. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush. Liora arrived at 9:45 a.m. The building's lobby was filled with shareholders, media representatives, and corporate observers. The quarterly meeting had been upgraded to a special session at Serena's request. She wanted to announce her bold new direction for the company. The crowd parted as Liora entered. Whispers rippled through the room. "Is that the daughter? I thought she'd left town. Why is she here?" Liora walked with her head high, carrying only two things, a leather briefcase and the small wooden box her father had left her. She saw Jonathan Pierce near the elevators. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. Everyone's in position. Martin Drummond was already in the conference room, seated in the back with his legal team. Rebecca Thorne had camera crews stationed outside and a live blog ready to publish. The trap was set. The conference room filled quickly. 13 board members took their positions at the main table. Shareholders filled the surrounding seats. Media representatives lined the walls. And at the head of the table, perfectly composed in a cream-colored suit, sat Serena Valdemar. She looked radiant, confident, victorious, until she saw Liora enter the room. For just a fraction of a second, Serena's mask slipped. Her eyes widened, her jaw tightened. Then the mask returned and she smiled pleasantly. "Liora, what a surprise. I didn't realize you were still a shareholder." "I'm not," Liora said calmly. "I'm here as Henrik Valdemar's daughter, and I've come to exercise my right to address this meeting." Murmurs ran through the room. Gerald Finch, seated beside Serena, leaned forward. "Miss Valdemar, this is highly irregular. The agenda has already been... Company bylaws allow any family member to address shareholders during special sessions." Martin Drummond's voice cut through the room. "Article 7, Section 3. I have the documentation here." Finch's face reddened. "That provision was intended for... The law doesn't specify intent, Mr. Finch. It specifies rights. Miss Valdemar has the right to speak." The board chairman, a man named Robert Carlyle, who had worked with Henrik for 20 years, looked uncomfortable. "This is unorthodox, but technically correct. The floor is yours, Miss Valdemar. Please keep it brief." Serena's smile had frozen on her face. Liora walked to the front of the room. She set the briefcase on the presentation table. She placed the wooden box beside it. Then she looked directly at Serena. Months ago in this room I was humiliated. I was told that my father, the man who built this company, who dedicated his life to excellence and integrity, had decided I deserved nothing, that I was unstable, incapable, unworthy. Her voice was steady, calm, but everyone could hear the steel underneath. I was given this box as my entire inheritance, a token, a dismissal. Some of you laughed, others looked away, but no one questioned it. No one asked if it was right. She opened the wooden box. What none of you knew, what Serena certainly didn't know, was that my father was more brilliant than anyone gave him credit for. Even while being drugged, manipulated, and isolated, he planned for this moment. Liora pulled out the first USB drive. This drive contains financial records, $87 million embezzled from Valdemar Industries over 5 years, every transaction traced, every offshore account identified, every forged signature documented. Gasps ran through the room. Serena's face paled. That's absurd. I've never... Let me finish. Liora inserted the drive into the presentation computer. The main screen flickered to life, showing spreadsheets, bank statements, transfer records. These transactions all bear my father's signature, but signature analysis, conducted by Swiss banking experts, proves they're forgeries. Sophisticated forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. She clicked to the next slide. Side-by-side comparisons of Henrik's real signature versus the fraudulent ones. The differences were subtle but undeniable. Someone had access to my father's signature. Someone who watched him sign documents for years. Someone who could practice until they got it right. She looked at Serena. Someone like his wife. The room erupted. Board members speaking over each other. Shareholders demanding explanations. Media representatives furiously taking notes. Order! Chairman Carlyle slammed his hand on the table. Let her finish. Liora inserted the second drive. This contains medical records, not my father's, mine, or rather, fabricated records designed to make me look mentally unstable. Psychiatric evaluations I never attended. Diagnoses I never received. Signatures I never provided. She pulled up the documents. These were created specifically to justify cutting me from my father's will. They were used to paint me as incompetent, unreliable, dangerous. She clicked to the next section. The real records from her actual medical history. Clean bill of health. No psychiatric treatment, no medications, nothing to support the fabricated narrative. Every document used to destroy my reputation was a lie. A calculated, systematic lie designed to steal my inheritance. Serena stood abruptly. This is slander. I don't have to listen to... Sit down. Martin Drummond's voice was ice. You'll listen to every word, Mrs. Valdemar, or you'll be removed from this meeting and arrested immediately. Your choice. Serena looked at Gerald Finch, her attorney. Finch wouldn't meet her eyes. Slowly, Serena sat. Liora inserted the third drive. Finally, these are audio recordings. My father's voice, recorded over the last 2 years of his life, during his brief moments of clarity. He documented everything. She played the first recording, Henrik's shaking voice describing how Serena controlled his medication, his visitors, his access to information. She played the second, Henrik expressing confusion about documents he couldn't remember signing. She played the third, Henrik explicitly stating his belief that Serena was betraying him. By the time the recordings finished, several board members looked physically ill. Chairman Carlyle's voice was hoarse. Are these authenticated? By 3 independent forensic audio specialists. The recordings are genuine. The timestamps are verified. The content is irrefutable. Liora pulled one more document from her briefcase. And this, she said, holding it up, is my father's true last will and testament, drafted 4 months before his death during a trip to Switzerland, witnessed by banking officials, authenticated with biometric security, legally unassailable. She handed it to Carlyle. He read it. His face went grey. This will leave the entirety of the estate to Liora Valdemar, he read aloud. It explicitly revokes all previous wills, and it includes a directive that in the event of contest, all evidence of fraud should be released publicly. The room fell absolutely silent. Serena stood again, trembling with rage. You little bitch. You think you can... The floor recognizes Serena Valdemar, Carlyle said coldly. Do you wish to contest these findings? Serena looked around the room, at the board members avoiding her gaze, at the shareholders recording everything on their phones, at the media representatives broadcasting live. For the first time in years, Serena had no play. No manipulation, no escape route, no way to win. "I want my attorney," she finally said. "Your attorney," Drummond said, standing, "is currently being questioned by federal prosecutors about his role in this fraud, as is Dr. Marcus Thorne, as are several others who assisted you." He approached the table. "Serena Castellan Valdemar, you're under investigation for estate fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy. I suggest you say nothing further without legal representation." Security entered the room. Not building security. Federal agents, badges displayed. "Mrs. Valdemar, you need to come with us." Serena looked at Liora one last time. Her expression was pure hatred. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Yes," Liora said quietly. "It is." As Serena was escorted from the room, the shareholders erupted into chaos. But Liora stood still, hands resting on the wooden box her father had given her. The box that had saved everything. The aftermath of the shareholders' meeting was chaos, orchestrated into precision. Within hours, Rebecca Thorne's article went live. The Valdemar Conspiracy, how a stepmother stole an empire, and how a daughter took it back. The story went viral instantly. By evening, it was the top trending topic on every social media platform. By the next morning, it was front-page news in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times. The business world was stunned. Serena Valdemar, once celebrated as a sophisticated leader, stepping into her late husband's shoes, was now the face of one of the most elaborate inheritance frauds in modern history, and the evidence was overwhelming. The criminal charges came swiftly. Federal prosecutors, armed with the evidence Liora and Drummond had compiled, filed 17 counts: estate fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud for international transfers, forgery, multiple counts, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, false statements to financial institutions. Serena's bail was set at $20 million, which she couldn't post because all her accounts had been frozen pending investigation. She spent her first night in custody in a federal holding facility. The woman who had slept in silk sheets and taken private jets now shared a cell with common criminals. But Serena wasn't the only one facing consequences. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the neurologist who had over-medicated Henrik, was arrested the same day. Investigators discovered he'd been paid $500,000 over 2 years to keep Henrik cognitively impaired. "I was treating a patient," Thorne protested to reporters outside the courthouse. "You were committing medical malpractice for profit," the prosecutor countered. His medical license was suspended pending criminal trial. Gerald Finch, the attorney who had replaced Martin Drummond, tried to flee the country. He was arrested at JFK Airport with $3 million in cash and a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands. "I was just following my client's instructions," he claimed. Bank records showed he'd received $2 million from Serena over 18 months, payment for fabricating documents, forging signatures, and constructing the fraudulent will. His law license was revoked immediately. 3 board members who had knowingly assisted Serena were forced to resign. 2 faced criminal charges. All faced civil litigation from shareholders demanding accountability. The empire Serena had built on lies collapsed in 72 hours. The media coverage was relentless. Television news ran segments analyzing the Valdemar case hourly. Business shows dissected how the fraud had gone undetected for so long. Legal analysts debated the implications for estate law and corporate governance. And everyone wanted to talk to Liora. She gave one interview with Rebecca Thorne and said everything that needed to be said. "This wasn't about money," Liora explained calmly, sitting in the Valdemar Industries office that now legally belonged to her. "This was about honoring my father's legacy, about ensuring that his life's work wasn't destroyed by someone who saw it only as a prize to be won." "What do you say to people who claim you're motivated by revenge?" Rebecca asked. Liora smiled slightly. "I'd say they're confusing justice with revenge. Revenge is about hurting someone who hurt you. Justice is about restoring what was stolen and ensuring it never happens again." "And Serena, do you have any message for her?" Leora's expression hardened. "She took years from my father. She isolated him, manipulated him, and stole his final moments of dignity. No punishment will ever be enough for that. But at least she'll face consequences. At least the world knows who she really is." The interview was viewed 47 million times in the first week. Serena's trial was set for 6 months later, but the legal proceedings were almost anticlimactic. Her new attorney, her fourth after 3 others refused to take the case, attempted to negotiate a plea deal. "My client is willing to return certain assets in exchange for reduced charges," the attorney proposed. Your client stole $87 million, committed elder abuse and orchestrated a multi-year fraud. The prosecutor replied, "She's not in a position to negotiate anything." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses testified one after another. Jonathan Pierce described how Serena had systematically purged anyone loyal to Henrik. The original CFO presented documents showing embezzlement spanning 5 years. Henrik's personal physician testified about medication irregularities. Bank officials from Switzerland authenticated Henrik's true will. Forensic experts confirmed the signature forgeries. Employees described Serena's threats and manipulation. The evidence was so overwhelming that even Serena's attorney looked defeated by the second week. When Liora took the stand, the courtroom was packed. She spoke for 2 hours about her childhood with her father, about Serena's arrival and gradual takeover, about watching her father slip away, about the humiliation of the false will reading, about finding the box and following her father's trail. By the time she finished, several jurors were crying. Serena showed no emotion. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all 17 counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later, 25 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 15. Additionally, Serena was ordered to pay $127 million in restitution, the $87 million she'd stolen plus interest and penalties. Since her assets were already frozen and would be seized, she'd never see freedom without crushing debt. As the sentence was read, Serena finally broke. She collapsed in the courtroom, sobbing, screaming that it wasn't fair, that Liora had manipulated everyone, that Henrik had wanted her to have the money. No one believed her. The woman who had controlled every room she entered for years was carried from court hysterical and defeated. But the story didn't end with Serena's imprisonment. There were others who had enabled her, either through action or inaction. Board members who had looked the other way when things seemed suspicious. Executives who had followed orders they knew were unethical. Attorneys and accountants who had processed transactions without asking questions. Liora didn't pursue criminal charges against all of them. That would have destroyed the company entirely. Instead, she offered a choice. You can resign quietly and face no further action, or you can stay and help me rebuild this company with integrity. But if you stay, understand this. The culture of silence is over. If you see something wrong, you report it. If you're asked to do something unethical, you refuse. The Valdemar name means something, and we're going to restore what it once represented. Most chose to resign. A few, the ones who had been genuinely deceived or threatened by Serena, stayed and became fierce allies in the rebuilding. 6 months after the trial, Liora stood in her father's old office. She'd had it restored to exactly how Henrik had kept it. No changes, no modernization, just the solid, classic design her father had preferred. On the desk sat the wooden box. Inside it now were new items: the deed to the estate, restored to Liora's name, the authenticated will, framed, a photograph of Henrik and Liora from her childhood, and a letter Liora had written but never sent, words she wished she could have said to her father before he died. "I kept my promise, Papa. I finished what you started, and I'm going to make you proud every single day." She locked the box and placed it in the office safe. Some treasures weren't meant to be displayed. Some victories were personal. 1 year after Serena's conviction, Valdemar Industries looked completely different. Not in structure. The core business remained steel manufacturing, shipping, and real estate. But in culture, in purpose, in the way it operated in the world. Liora had spent 12 months systematically rebuilding everything Serena had corrupted. She started with transparency. Every financial statement was now publicly audited by 3 independent firms. Every board meeting was recorded, and minutes were made available to all shareholders. Every major decision was explained clearly, with reasoning documented. "My father built this company on trust," Liora told the restructured board. "Serena destroyed that trust. We'll earn it back one decision at a time." The business community watched with skepticism at first. Young heiress playing CEO was the narrative in some quarters. Emotional decision-making will hurt profits, analysts predicted. "Give it 2 years before she has to sell," competitors whispered. They were all wrong. Under Liora's leadership, Valdemar Industries thrived. She implemented policies her father had discussed but never formalized. Employee profit sharing that distributed 10% of annual profits to workers at all levels. Environmental sustainability initiatives that reduced the company's carbon footprint by 40% in 18 months. educational partnerships that paid for employees' children to attend college, ethical sourcing requirements that ensured fair labor practices across every supply chain. These aren't charity, Liora explained during a shareholder presentation. These are investments in the company's long-term health. Happy employees are productive employees. Sustainable practices ensure we have resources for decades to come. Educated communities create better markets. This is good business. The numbers proved her right. Employee retention hit 94%, highest in the industry. Productivity increased by 23%. The company's reputation improved so dramatically that clients specifically sought out Valdemar Industries, willing to pay premium prices to work with an ethically run organization. Stock prices rose 67% in the first year. But Liora wasn't satisfied with just running a successful business. She wanted to honor her father's memory with purpose. 6 months into her tenure as CEO, she announced the Henrik Valdemar Foundation, a $1 billion endowment dedicated to 3 causes: elder protection services, funding legal aid for seniors facing financial exploitation or abuse, creating education programs about estate planning and fraud prevention, supporting investigations into guardianship abuse. What happened to my father happens to thousands of elderly people every year, Liora said at the foundation launch. Most don't have the resources to fight back. This foundation ensures they're not alone. Corporate ethics education, partnering with business schools to create mandatory courses on ethical leadership, funding research into corporate fraud prevention, creating certification programs for ethical business practices. Business school teaches profit maximization, Liora explained. But who's teaching the next generation of leaders about moral courage, about doing right even when it's expensive? That's what this program does. Second chances, providing job training, legal support, and employment opportunities for people rebuilding their lives after personal crises, including those leaving prison. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, Liora said simply, including people who've made mistakes. The foundation's first hire was a program director who had spent 10 years in prison for white-collar crime and had spent another decade advocating for criminal justice reform. He understands failure and redemption better than anyone, Liora explained, when critics questioned the choice. That's exactly who should lead this work. The personal transformations were quieter, but equally significant. Liora reached out to relatives who had abandoned her during Serena's reign. Some apologized genuinely. "We were cowards," her Uncle Richard admitted. "We saw what was happening but were too afraid to act. I'm ashamed." "Then help me now," Liora replied. "Help me ensure this never happens to anyone else in our family." Richard became the foundation's board chairman. Others refused to acknowledge their complicity. They remained bitter that Serena's conviction had revealed their own cowardice. Liora didn't pursue them. Some relationships couldn't be repaired, and she'd learned that forcing forgiveness was pointless. She also dealt with Serena one final time. 2 years into Serena's sentence, the prisoner requested a meeting. Liora's advisors urged her to refuse. "You don't owe her anything." But Liora went anyway. The federal facility was grey and cold. Serena looked older, harder, nothing like the elegant woman who had once commanded rooms with a smile. They sat across from each other in a visiting room, separated by a table and years of betrayal. Serena spoke first. "I'm not going to apologize. You want me to say I'm sorry, that I regret everything. I won't. Your father was weak, sentimental. He would have destroyed everything he built with his outdated ideas about loyalty and honor. I saved that company." Liora listened without expression. "But I'll admit I underestimated you," Serena continued. "I thought you were weak like him. Turns out you're more ruthless than I ever was." "No," Liora said quietly. "I'm more patient, and I care about more than just winning." "Care?" Serena laughed bitterly. "You destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it." Serena's eyes filled with rage. "So why are you here, to gloat?" "To tell you something you need to understand." Liora leaned forward. "Everything you stole, every lie you told, every person you manipulated, none of it mattered. Because the only thing that endures is truth. You had 5 years of false victory. I have the rest of my life to build something real." She stood to leave. "That's the difference between us. You wanted to take something. I want to create something. And history will remember which one mattered." Serena said nothing. Liora never saw her again. 5 years after her father's death, Liora stood at his grave. The headstone was simple, elegant, exactly as Henrik would have wanted. Henrik Valdemar Builder, father, protector of truth. She placed the wooden box on the ground in front of the headstone. Inside was everything her father had left her. The USB drives, the recordings, the photographs, the tools he'd used to protect her from beyond death. "I don't need these anymore," Liora said softly. "The battle's over. The company is thriving. Your legacy is secure." She paused, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "People ask me all the time how you knew, how you planned everything so perfectly, how you managed to protect me even when Serena controlled everything." She smiled, tears on her cheeks. "I tell them you were brilliant, strategic, always 3 steps ahead, and that's all true. But I think the real answer is simpler. You loved me, and love makes you fight harder than anything else." The wind rustled through the trees surrounding the cemetery. "I kept my promise, Papa. I took back what was ours. I restored your name. And now I'm building something even better, something that honors not just your success, but your values." She touched the headstone gently. "The Valdemar name means integrity again. It means ethical leadership. It means taking care of the people who helped build our success. That's your legacy now. Not just the money or the empire, but the principles." Liora stood, straightening her suit. "I have a board meeting in an hour. We're voting on a new initiative, funding clean water projects in communities where we source materials. You would have loved it. Profitable and purposeful." She picked up the wooden box. "This doesn't belong here. It belongs where it can inspire the next generation. I'm donating it to a museum exhibit on corporate ethics. The box that saved an empire, they want to call it." One last look at the headstone. "Thank you, Papa, for everything, for the box, for the plan, for believing I was strong enough to finish what you started. Now it's my turn to build something worthy of your name." She walked away from the grave, shoulders straight, purpose clear. Behind her, carved into granite, Henrik Valdemar's name stood as testament to a man who had protected his daughter, even from the grave. And ahead of her, in a company transformed and a foundation empowered, his legacy lived on, not in the fortune he'd amassed, but in the principles he'd defended. 10 years later, Forbes published a cover story, "The Valdemar Transformation: How Liora Valdemar Built the Most Ethical Empire in America." The article detailed everything: the company's continued growth, the foundation's impact, the industry-wide changes inspired by Valdemar Industries' practices. It ended with a quote from Liora, now 42 years old and recognized as one of the most influential CEOs in the world. "My father once told me that power without wisdom is just noise. I've spent the last decade trying to prove that wisdom without power is also insufficient. You need both. The strength to act and the judgment to act rightly. That's what true leadership looks like. And that's the legacy I'm building, not for myself. For everyone who believes business can be a force for good." The wooden box that started it all now sits in the Smithsonian Institution, part of an exhibit on corporate ethics and family courage. Visitors can see the USB drives, the photographs, the key. They can read Henrik's final message to his daughter. They can understand that sometimes the smallest inheritance carries the greatest power. And they can learn that justice, when combined with patience and purpose, is unstoppable. Have you protected your legacy with the same care Henrik showed? Do your loved ones know where to find the truth if something happens to you? Are you surrounding yourself with people of integrity or people of convenience? When you see injustice, do you speak up or look away? Remember, your greatest power isn't what you accumulate. It's what you protect and who you empower. Share this story with someone who needs to understand that patience, preparation, and principle always defeat manipulation in the end. Because in the war between truth and lies, truth may lose battles, but it always wins the war. This story is a testament to every person who has been underestimated, betrayed, or silenced. Your moment will come. Be ready.